All right, as usual, what do we start with? Bucket fill, something good. What do we got going? What do we got going on?
Festival.
And it was like a big event. It was like a neighborhood event.
Yeah. 30 people stayed all night. I had that story. I did it.
I'm really proud of you.
Okay, I want to have it on my phone and have some.
I love that. I did it.
So then I need this.
You did do it. There was a little bit of anxiety around that. And it all worked out. Awesome. Awesome.
I like.
Had extroverts.
The cards in my-
Excited about
I
that.
have a card.
All right, what else? What else is good?
I have a
Yeah.
bucket fill
Yes.
Oh,
for my girlfriend Maureen. We're here.
South Marshall.
She dropped off, last week I had a surgery. My husband has a back surgery coming up, so we're kind of going through a lot right now. But she dropped off homemade like lasagna and homemade cookies. Are you kidding me? Homemade. Anyways, everything. So.
Go with it. Like, what are you doing? Especially flour on your face. You slaved over those for hours.
Anyways, it was very, very powerful. And on top of that, I've been able to reach out a few times and he's been around a little bit longer than I am. So I really, really appreciate you, Maureen. Thank you so much.
Awesome. That's super cool. What else? What else we got? What's good? Bucket fills. I saw it was like you committed, even though it was only a half commit, you committed.
Big one, and they help do some marketing stuff for my own business. Thank you.
Awesome. Super cool. What else? What else we got? Good.
So I'm saying this especially for you, Katie. So I have the love of my life is named Potato, this little French bulldog, and she's 2. And last week, Tuesday, after the team meeting, I went home. She couldn't walk, so she got a spine injury that we don't know how, and they're kind of susceptible to that. So we went. I was at the vet twice on Tuesday, Wednesday, once Thursday, and Friday. Because they were assessing whether she needed an $8,000 back surgery on Friday or not, or she was gonna slowly recover. So a lot of people were praying for her, and she is now slowly recovering. So she's now walking around, but she does not need surgery. So that was huge. Yeah, that was a huge, very fortunate, because she's only 2, so. Yeah, I know, it doesn't like to be,
Very little, but.
doesn't like to be slow. Yeah, she's not little. Oh yeah, so that was good news.
Good, really good news. What else? What else is good? Costume, should we talk about that? I think that might be the next slide. Okay, so Thursday is vision boarding #1, so that's the important thing of the day. I was told I had to say that. No, just kidding. No, but honestly, vision boarding is on Thursday. We've kind of been doing a few different things the last few weeks, just about mindset, goal setting, and truly doing a vision board. There might be people right now that are like, give me a break, Kami. I'm not cutting out pictures. I'm not doing this. I'm not crafty. I don't know why you would want me to do this. It is one of the most powerful tools you can actually have, quite honestly, because when you look at that and then you realize, you know, maybe you check it every single day. Maybe you look at it 6 months in and you're like, I'm not even close to what I said I wanted this year. There's a large reality check there, right? It's a visual for you. And then for some people, when you're making calls and you don't want to make calls anymore and you look at that, it reminds you like, hey, this is why I'm doing it, right? Because we all have that. So the vision boarding part of it is incredibly important. The secondary part to all of that would be the costumes that will be worn on Thursday, which we are gonna vision board in those as well. And then we have some food coming around noon, right?
Halloween elves.
Any questions around that? We do have the boards for you. We have all of the like glue and whatnot. We have some magazines, but if you have specific things that you want on the vision board, make sure to bring that.
Sorry, back to bucket fills, new construction listing going live today. And I will be doing my costume to do an open house at the my costume is for the open house on Thursday. So how can I still fit in for the concert?
Absolutely. If you're working and in a costume, I feel like that might be 2 entries, but that's just me.
Let's go.
That is awesome. Any other questions around, vision boarding? No? Who's gonna wear a costume on Thursday? Yes. You guys are all my best friends. All right, next slide. Also, can I just ask the people that don't wanna wear a costume, like, just be like, why not? What do you do with that?
Well, I told you, I thought that today was the costume and
John's already,
wore my costume. Nursery rhymes,
I want
Little
John
Boy
to be,
Blue.
Hulk Hogan.
now you're gonna have to wear it on Thursday again.
Oh, I
Just saying.
got a better one.
All right, so November training calendar, super fun. November is going to be a wealth building training, essentially all month. So we have our commercial team meeting on the 5th. We have our team meeting on the 5th. Bold is still happening on each of the Wednesdays. We also have a free CE on the 7th, which is 1031 exchanges. Our leadership team will be out of office on the 8th, making sure that we are also doing vision boarding and goals for next year. Of the 11th, the office will be closed. And then we have a wealth building series on the 14th with Bethany Nelson, followed by the 21st with Derek. Those two, if there is no other class that you guys ever go to in a year, and you are in any way considering working with investors or being an investor yourself, you should be at those classes. Not only are they actively selling real estate, but they are actively investing as well. And it's 2 very different approaches to it, quite honestly, because the one thing that you're going to learn about investing in wealth building is you can do it multiple different ways. So if that's ever been an interest of yours, show up to those 2 classes. I know you're going to get at least one thing, if not a ton of things from both of them. And not often do you get to just sit there and ask people what they do while they're wealth building, right? So there will be some questions and answers for that too. We have commercial team meeting on the 19th, and then we have our R&R on the 19th as well. Do we know where that is?
Quite yet.
Okay, so that's to be determined. And then we have Thanksgiving, we will be closed, as well as the 29th, that Friday. Any questions around the training calendar for November?
Sign up to go to it, but the sign-in sheet, it's outside vendor, so the sign-in sheet will be on that day. But you'll need to actually sign in to get the credit.
It was the Minnesota Housing that required that, and some CE providers do require it. This one you won't. Great question. Any other questions around November training calendar?
Just remember to take note of the days we're closed, the days we're not here. So if you're wondering like, why did my check get cut? Because we're not here. So just remember to take note.
And I'm not sure if and also when you're putting different things live or changes, just make sure that that's something that you reach out to myself or Heather on that. But again, I hope we can take note that those days we are actually.
Can you remind us when the mandatory CE, is that
December 11th.
I need to write that.
And that's here. Okay. And I think if you need that, you got an email from multiple people, quite honestly.
If you need it, you're also getting emails from the association. You're getting those emails, you need it.
we get the information to sign up for that again at some point?
They'll send it out.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? All right. Before we talk about, let's go through this. So these are the wealth building classes. I shared these on Instagram. If you have clients, this is a great touch point of you also not necessarily teaching the class, but having them come along. So if you have an investor client, I would not hesitate to have them come to these classes with you, right? So you can learn together. Am I overstepping on that, or is that right? Because again, they're going to learn something, you're going to learn something. and you don't have to be the one teaching it. Fair? So we've got wealth building series. I guess that one's building for realtors versus, for others. Bethany Nelson's on the 14th, 11 a.m. in person only and Zoom. Nope, that was the other one. Corrected it as I kept reading. And then this is growing your net worth, with Derek, and that's in person and via Zoom, on the 21st.
And Bethany's, hers is longer. So instead of 11 to noon, it's 11 to 12:30.
Or doom and gloom. No.
Oh, for real? No.
No, I just wanted to guys be aware of, probably gonna see a ton of volatility. The last few weeks, there's been little information, so the market's kind of gone to their own devices and figured, made it worse, slightly worse. This is just this week, all the information that's coming out that the market can make decisions on and pull back and forth. The big ones this week is on Friday, is the payrolls and unemployment rate come out. As I've mentioned before, that's really what the market's focused on, more than inflation, although inflation is rearing its ugly head just based on, we don't know what's gonna happen the following week. And there's some fears that inflation will come back into our world that we have to contend with on that. So, and then let's just go ahead and flip to the next one. So that's next week too. Obviously there's the election on Tuesday, and then the Fed is, their conference is on Thursday. So it's a lot of information coming out. So just be prepared for that. I think it's an opportunity to talk to borrowers in this time to say, if you can buy, it's still a good time to buy. It's going to probably put a pause on new people coming into the market for a little bit. So if there's homes out there, I know we've already talked about this time as being good, like you can do contingent offers, you can talk to the sellers, if they're selling, there's probably a reason that they're selling. From a buyer's perspective, you might have a little bit of leverage. So I would talk as a positive to buyers that way. I think it's key, like with ours, we would talk about how do we leverage maybe temporary buy downs to make it more comfortable for a few years, even on a payment standpoint. We talk about, we offer a free refinance within 3 years too. So you kind of say, hey, you're getting a 2-for-1 deal here. Hard to time the market, but generally speaking, people are pretty happy that they bought when they did, when they've given a little bit of time, right? You look back and say, I'm glad I bought that, no matter what time it was, right? So I think it's a way to talk about it that way. Positivity. I would just say also, hopefully what I'm trying to do with my clients is communicate with them on I call them on Thursday just to let them know if they're going out that weekend, here's what the rates look like. So I don't want anybody blindsided when they come out and they fall in love with a house at an open house and now they can't afford it, right? So I think that's key, to just have that communication. And your lender should do that for you if they're not, right? Like encourage them to. Not a fun conversation to tell people that rates have gone up, 7/8 in a month, but it's reality. So I think you just have to have that conversation with your clients to let them know on that, because so that's kind of the market. Any questions, any thoughts?
Is anyone getting any questions from buyers? Wendy?
Question, I saw that, the Fed is meeting again and expected for the rates to come down. Do you see that impacting mortgage?
No. I think right now, last I saw, they're still thinking that there's a chance that they'll lower it 25 basis points. So if that's in there, it's already factored in. If it deviates from that, that's where they can play with us on there. So if they don't do it, there's a chance. It all depends on kind of what the other information leading out to it. It's all kind of factors in together. It's not doesn't tie to it as much as we just saw with the last one, right? We got a 50 basis point drop and all of a sudden rates went the wrong way. So yeah, I would not bank on it right now.
But to be fair, if you're seeing that, right, in the news, wherever, like general public believes when they see that rates are gonna drop, right? Like that's what they see. They see it going, hey, this is happening, this is happening. This is where it might be a really good idea to, kind of arm yourself with some knowledge and information to be able to have this conversation versus it's not a linear effect, right? It's not like this happens and then this happens automatically. Because I think that's a conversation a lot of buyers have is, oh, I'm waiting for the rates to drop because this was in the news. That's not necessarily the case, right? And being able to explain that to them on a at least a surface level, I think would be incredibly beneficial to you this year.
So with that, yeah, and then I just remind you again, bold special, you can make it a little easier on folks with doing our rate buster, engage clients on that end. Like I said, might be a good time to go out and look. Yeah, I know it doesn't seem doom and gloom because of volatility and that type of thing, but if other people are staying back, that's when you can go and make some money, right? You can do it that way, or we can go pre-appraisal. That's easier. Save them $500, $600 on that end. And then also, like Jesse did last weekend, please use us for open houses if you're gonna do those. Love to support those any way, shape, or form we can. Another thing I was gonna note that I'm sure you guys are all aware, but Applebee's is selling $1 zombie drinks for the month of October. So we are going to be at Applebee's tomorrow from 3:30 to 5:30. It's a rum drink. It's got gummy brains in it. So just, if you guys are interested, we'll be there 3:30 to 5:30. I will personally buy each one of you a zombie drink if you come by. So that's Knollwood Applebee's. So hope to see you there, 3:30 to 5:30.
Love it.
For a zombie drink.
I mean, you get me a gummy brain, so I'm there.
It's like a fresh drink.
Thanks.
Okay, before we get into this, the one thing I want to talk about is family reunion. We have a really, really good group so far going. There's about 10 people that are already committed to going to family reunion in Vegas in February. The reason we bring this up right now is because February will be here any minute. Once we get to Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have all these things planned in February. Again, I don't remember the dates right off. I think it's the 17th through the 21st of February. So it's after Valentine's Day. If you are like, I don't want to go by myself and I don't have the funds to get a room, alone. I have had multiple people reach out to me to say who is open to sharing rooms. Please, if that's you who would be open to sharing a room or want to find a roommate, please send me an email so that I can put you guys together and you can kind of see if it's an option for you to be able to go to it. Also, the rates keep going up each month, right? So each month, I think it goes up a little bit in regards to monetary value. So if you're interested, again, reach out to us because we'd love to have even more people go. And Heather and I are in the midst of creating some fun dinner plans and hoping to have at least 15 people there. So we're making those reservations now. If there's more than that, we need to make sure that we can get a reservation large enough for all of us. Any questions around family reunion? I don't remember. Once you register, I believe it's like anywhere between $289 and I think like $329 is what I recall. Oh, it's not in here to answer those.
Family reunion, it takes you like to the room.
I think there's like 4 different hotels that you can actually stay at. So it really depends on which one you choose.
How much does the event cost?
It's I think $11.99 right now. Honestly, I think it's like anything, right? So events become more expensive. Each place starts charging more. It's like anything else. Inflation. It is what it is, right? Like, either way, I would say no matter the price point, I guarantee you'll get one transaction out of that would pay for it twofold. As long as you take the nuggets and you actually apply them after the training, right? I think that's the only problem with some trainings is we get really excited, we get this energy, and then we don't implement it, right? So we just like put a whole bunch of information in and then do nothing with it. Then it wouldn't be. Or if you don't show up and go to the classes, that's the other piece. I know there's some first timers that went to mega camp that implemented quite a few things after that. If any of you wanna kind of speak to that, Ben or Jacob?
Yeah.
And that was one where it was like, you should go and you're like, and then you went and it was amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And we did the panel there. We got lots of good information. I'm happy to revisit it too, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions around family reunion? All right. So we've been doing a lot of mindset stuff. Before we jump into mindset, is there any topics or challenges right now that you guys want to talk about before we hit on some of the mindset and goal setting? What are some challenges out there in the market right now that you're coming up against besides rates?
How to freshen up a open house you posted multiple times at a property multiple times, like
Okay.
a handful of times.
Okay. Is it new construction? Is
Yeah.
it, okay. What ideas do we have for that? And when you say freshen up, you mean more traffic? You mean different marketing?
I'm open to ideas.
Okay, what do we got? What would you do if you had the same open house week after week?
And a gimmick, free pumpkins this weekend.
You done a
you know,
neighborhood?
something.
Yeah.
Everyone?
Apple dunking.
I wanna go to that open.
I'm like, I'm gonna go up to that and bring the kids. It's actually a great idea though, outside. Okay, so we've got like an event or a gimmick for it. What else? What else we got?
Already door knock.
It's not really in a neighborhood.
Like it's
They're-
just a solo.
They're the townhomes over that
Got it.
has in Long Lake. So it's like downtown Long Lake, so there's a bunch of commercial buildings and a beach and
Who is the ideal buyer for this?
someone who's downsizing.
Okay, so would it be an option to go to places where there's larger homes, right? Like neighborhoods that potentially would be downsizing, and knocking at the opportunity? Right, like those would be potentially the buyers saying, hey, I've got an open house here. Ever thought about downsizing?
Especially, that's Excelsior, right?
Long Lake.
Long Lake. Maybe just Long Lake and Orno, yeah.
I mean, just an option on like trying to hit who that buyer is versus even the neighborhood. What else?
How quickly to do a price adjustment? Because obviously things are just a little bit slower now and, with less showings, it's hard to assess. Zurich's. Are they here?
They're here, yeah.
We got a bunch of listings. We've got a bunch of listings on now too. So it's like, how quickly do you do it? And I would say do them a lot faster now than you would have done them.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because that's another challenge. How long, I mean, are we having a lot of listings sitting right now? Yes? Why? Are the competition sitting as well?
So yes, but the properties that are priced the best are still selling.
Like in a reasonable amount of time, what is that time frame?
It depends on the price point. So if it's first time under 400, 2 weeks. But if it's anything different than that, we're seeing 100 days on market. We've got some stuff at 30 and 60 days they used to have.
Okay.
Wouldn't normally have
On
that.
the market priced pretty well.
Wendy, what's the average days on market?
Yeah, I don't know right now. I know,
Okay. I was like, she always, I know, so I was like.
I know the other I just prepped something for Eden Prairie, and in Eden Prairie, right, I mean, it's so hyper local at this point.
Yeah,
Eden Prairie in that mid-range even right now there's less than a month of inventory. There's,
but they're still sitting.
no, they're like, average days on market is 14 or 17,
Okay.
and the median is like 38. So,
Okay.
so those are just fine, but it's really super, it's like the tale of two markets. Even we've got clients that have lost cash offer, listing was $595, they offered $625 with an escalation, and they lost because someone went so far over. And that was like in the first 2 days. And we're seeing that on the one hand with properties that are really updated and in great condition. And then on the other hand, ones that aren't all that, having a longer lead time.
Well, there's only two things really that we can control. We cannot control how many buyers are out there. We can't control what happens with, the interest rates. Neither can this crazy lender over there with all the bad news. But we can.
Yeah.
There's a way to spin it all. We're gonna spin it positive. Go to Applebee's, we'll figure it out.
For all the great decisions.
So there's two things we can control at all times on the listing, and what are they?
Price and condition.
Thank you, price and condition. So price and condition, and a lot of times when we're considering price adjustments and stuff, you have to ask yourself the question on both of those. Are you getting feedback that the condition it's Minnesota nice, or are you getting just basic feedback that the condition's not awesome, right? There's some issues with the condition. Are you getting feedback on price? We're not gonna get feedback on price because it's Minnesota nice. Nobody is gonna say that, oh, the house is overpriced because their client's not buying it, right? So.
People really don't click the overpriced button, because I do that all the
Do
time.
you?
Oh, no.
If your client likes it, it's your
So Rick
responsibility.
replies on his feedback, just kidding.
If your client likes the house, it's your responsibility to say that the price is low, right? I mean, that is our responsibility. But if you're not getting feedback, then you gotta look at both of them. So, and like, we've got a listing right now that we're working on together, and instead of just adjusting the price, we know that the condition's a little bit of an issue. We also know that the price is a little bit of an issue. So we take it off for a week, make an adjustment in the condition, make an adjustment in the price. So but you pick one of them or do both if you have to. Just make sure that you're assessing both of those. And if the condition is good, there is zero question that the price is the issue, right? Condition, location is good. Okay, what's left? The price. You gotta adjust the price. So.
Okay, so I heard like 4 things out of that whole situation, out of all of what you're saying, right? So days on market, it's sitting longer. When we're saying it's sitting longer and it's 14 days, right? But that's a long time for people when we go from, hey, it's selling in multiples in 5 days to now I've got 2 weeks. So number one, what are we prepping our sellers with in regards to days on market? Like, what is the conversation around that right now when you're taking listings? Like, what expectation are you setting for these sellers? Are they still under the mindset that this is gonna go in a week? I don't sell homes really anymore, so I need you to participate.
I went into the last one with the showings,
Yeah,
like in that price point that we're talking about, saying how many showings each list is getting, then how many showings depending. To say, okay, so here's what it tells us, if you had this many showings and we don't have an offer, we're priced out of the market that.
Okay.
Or if we haven't even had that many showings, they're crossing off the list before they don't even come see it because you're priced.
so you're using book of showing statistics to one, price it, right? And set the expectation of where you're getting the most showings. Is that what I'm hearing? And then you're using that same statistic a week or 2 weeks later to say, hey, here's where we're at. And here's where the average is at.
Appointment to say, just so you know, if we get to this point and we don't have this, that tells us the market's giving us feedback and we're gonna do a price drop.
Okay. Who else is prepping their sellers that way?
Yeah, we're doing the same kind of data thing, and we're also looking at our active competition and things that have sold, what they originally listed at, what they reduced to, and then what they sold at, so that we're able to see that track record to ideally help them avoid having a record like that, so that we're going on at a price that's super strategic from the beginning, so that we don't have that experience that a lot of those other sellers had, those longer days on market. So which also preps them that we might have longer days on market.
Okay. Well, because how many of us are used to having that conversation 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in with a seller? That it's still sitting on the market. Like, let's be honest, how many of you have actually had that experience with sellers? Because if you have been in real estate for less than 4 years, you probably have never had those conversations, to be completely honest. So who is that? Who's had their real estate license 4 years or less? Do you feel like you're fully equipped to have those conversations with these states? Yes? Okay. How do you use this for buyers? How are we using this for buyers right now? I wish Heather was here. Heather told me about a buyer. Not that Heather. Yeah, because they lost out, and this was a price point that you wouldn't imagine, right? So it was a luxury price point, was days on market, I think was 20 some days, almost 30 days, something like that. They waited. When they waited, they got beat out on multiple offers, right? So really savvy agents are watching these things on the buy side too, right? Because they're waiting for this potential to say, okay, you've been on the market for 27 days and the seller's frustrated. There's going to be a price reduction most likely. They come in, they offer lower than what it's at. They say, okay, maybe I'll price reduce, maybe not. And then the next offer comes in, right? So how are you utilizing this for buyers right now? 'Cause I think right now is a huge opportunity for buyers. Huge.
Yeah.
Like a gigantic opportunity. And if we are not utilizing this, and quite honestly, the frustration of sellers as a buyer's agent or as a buyer representative, we should be.
I came in late, so I'm not.
Yep.
But one of the biggest, I feel like buyers are getting a lot more seller paid, different things.
Okay.
Better deals that way, like there's a lot more negotiation, like they're getting full inspections, no question asked. All the fun perks. Buyer that normally you're waiving, you ask, then you get left.
So if you have buyers right now, are you letting them know this? Right? Like these things are happening for them as a positive. If you have a buyer that's also selling, this is the most opportunistic time for them to actually have a contingent offer. Like I have seen so many contingent offers coming across the desk of long contingencies too. Not like you got 5 days to get your house sold through pending, right? Who's had contingent offers accepted in the last few weeks? Okay, Rachel's doing business. Nobody else is, I guess. Okay, Jacob, shoot, awesome. Thanks for participation.
Hey, Kami,
Yeah.
this is Heather. Hey. The one that we got beat out on was a 14-day contingency, and the people did not even have their house on the market yet.
And yeah, and it was in multiples, right?
Yes, yep.
So I mean, those are the situations that are happening right now that I get. We think that this is all doom and gloom, but it's not, right? Because everyone has a different motivation. And quite honestly, sometimes the peace of mind of not having to have two houses at one time or like shotgun selling the one house so that you can get the next house is well worth whatever might be going on with interest rates or payments. Do we know how to work around that? Okay, what else? What are other challenges in the market right now? I know there's challenges because we see all of the checks and pendings that are coming in, and right now there are not a whole lot of them. So there are challenges. This is the time for us to talk about those and get ideas together. So what other ones we got?
People wanting to wait. So after the election, after next year to sell.
Okay, what are we doing to combat that?
Buyers is getting the deal in the market now, which is spring, right?
Yep.
We got a buyer under contract, talking about those deck wings. They were gonna wait till spring. Now they're under contract for like 20 grand under less.
Awesome.
50 grand.
Okay.
So were you saying buyers waiting for the election sellers? You were talking sellers?
I have buyers. Well, but now is the time that they can get a offer accepted, where spring, they're in competition and that's much more challenging. I mean, that's my.
The other thing is to get it signed and get them working on the house, like right now, you know, I mean, the election's what, Tuesday? I mean, that's.
Can I ask you, what's the objection about the election? What is the belief that these sellers or buyers are having?
If it goes one way or the other, that everything's gonna crash and burn. Yeah.
Okay.
And
What was that graph? Where's Heather? She's not in here. there was a graph that I'm gonna send out today once I find it. Do you remember where that was from? In regards to price points, after like historical election on what actually happens to the housing market, which I think is incredibly valuable, because I think we all have perception of whatever it might be, the election, interest rates, whatever, yet we have zero facts as a consumer to back that up usually, right? Just like the interest rate portion. I'm gonna send that graph out when I find it today, because that's actually factual and it's historical facts between elections and what happened with the housing market months afterwards.
Generally speaking, what happened in the housing market months afterwards?
There's not this huge uptick or downtick. There's not like, that's not what actually rules the housing market, right?
Reality is what's gonna happen is gonna happen. It's not indicated by one or the other.
The other thing to be considered is that there's so much uncertainty right now, and regardless which direction it goes, it'll be over. That is a big deal to a lot of people, just knowing that, okay, now it's over. We're resilient. We've always been a resilient country. That's probably not going to change in the next 6 days, 5 days or whatever. And so whichever direction it goes, just having that done, usually a week after that or so, where people just kind of settle back into their lives and they get going on, they get back to business essentially. So
We have a week.
some optimism.
That's gonna be an objection for a week, right? In regards to once it's decided, it's a week, right? And then after that, we don't know. You never know. I don't know. Eric doesn't know. Quite honestly, the person that gets elected probably doesn't know either, right? So there is zero chance that your consumer is going to be able to like, hey, I know this is what's gonna happen, whichever way it goes, right? I think this is the part where we get back to motivation. Why are they actually wanting to move? Because any time is the right time to buy or sell if it's the right time for them, which is usually, I want to upsize, I want to downsize. It's not usually a financial investment of gaining something, right? They're not investors necessarily. Most of the people that I work with, half the time I try to talk them into finding equity in a house and they don't want to, right? So I think this is where we have to really, really equip ourselves with great questions. Because there's gonna be all of these objections, no matter what it is, right? It can be the election, it can be it went one way, it went another way. It can be the interest rates are unknown. We have to really understand the client. I know it's probably five weeks ago maybe. How many people are still writing down questions to ask their client?
I started back again.
Okay. This is gonna be, what's the number one question you ask your clients? I'm gonna go around the room. Everyone's gonna say it. Rachel, what's the number one question you ask your client to connect?
Are you looking to buy? I guess, what are we?
Any question, like, let's go around the room and ask questions. What would you ask your
looking for?
Okay, what are you looking for? Amanda?
What are you hoping to get when your house sells?
Okay,
Why are you?
When?
Ben? Okay, Alex?
Yeah, why? Why is it not?
Okay, Maureen? Okay, I'm gonna stop. We just went through 6 people, there's a lot of when and why, right? What do you know about these people from those 2 questions, like truly as a human being?
Nothing.
0.
What's important to you about that?
Okay, what's important to you about that?
Going on in life, changes.
Hey.
What's shaking?
Guys, I'm making an example out of this because I guarantee right now, if you don't have those like this at the top of your head, there's no way you're sitting across the table from a buyer or a seller that you're gonna come up with some creative question to ask them to put yourself apart from anybody else or really get to the true motivation. Can we all agree on that? You guys are probably all mad because I put you on the spot, but the reality is, I tell you guys these things, we teach these things, I've learned these from other people because it works. Right? So if it's just we go in and we're like when and why, and we don't connect with them, you're gonna keep getting objection after objection after objection.
You gotta be careful with why too, because it puts people on the defensive.
Hi, Tony.
Hi.
Okay. Tony, what's one of your like top questions that you ask a seller when you're there?
I think the last time I was in a listing appointment.
Okay, really? Buyer.
I'll have a lot of conversations just about them and their family and where they're headed and like, just all the things that are important to them.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like, I don't really talk that much about, specific, like a lot of things we do in listing appointments, like I don't do that much of that. I'm
Tell me
talking
more
to them about who they are and where they're headed and like, where do they see themselves in however long, I don't know. It's just more of a conversation. It's not so much like directly about like, hey, well, where do you want to price your house or like, this staging thing or that staging thing. It's not so much about the nuts and bolts of that stuff. I spend 90% of my time just talking about them and having a conversation. Like it quite honestly could be about politics right now.
21.
Works great.
Rick.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. Forming the relationship, obviously, a lot of these people might be past clients, they might be a referral, but if they're not, even if they are, we ask, like if I was working with you, I was like, Amy, how's the transition? Your kid's going back to school and sports, how's that going? Well, now you tell me they're back in school, they're in the whatever Minneapolis district that is, well, let's just say the Minnetonka School District, and yeah, one of the important things is they need to stay there because, daughter's playing soccer at this level, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just that basic conversation that you care about the people, you're asking them questions about their life. You're going to get all kinds of answers and all kinds of information on what you need as you proceed to then talk about how you're going to help them sell their house.
Yeah, so it's centered around the relationship, and then you fill in these little pieces that say, okay, well, when do you think you might want to be there?
Right.
Like, when do you think that might work, or what? Then, and it's like such a small piece are the real estate specific questions.
Okay.
But they kind of weave inside the bigger conversation. Then a lot more. Like, hey, are they gonna, when we have to reduce the price to X to sell, like, are they committed enough to that plan where they're gonna do that, or are they gonna pull the plug and say, hey, I know I'm gonna do it this spring?
There's a reason for this, a big reason for this. Why do people move? People don't move for no reason. And this is the point of forming a relationship and having that being the core first, is that to establish trust with somebody is so critical in this job because they're not moving for no particular reason. It's not like, oh, I just want to move from Chanhassen to Prairie because I thought it sounded cool. That's, there's going to be a reason. It's going to be divorce. It's going to be kids. It's going to be job. It's going to be, marriage. It's going to be, there's all these different things. And if we don't form that relationship, they're not going to trust you. You're not going to get that client and you're not going to get that deal.
Well, I think the other part of that too is when you figure out the reason without like really going in depth with that reason and the objection comes up, right? Well, I'm waiting for this. Okay. Remind me, because we were talking about here's your reason and your motivation. How long are you willing to wait to figure this part out? What if nothing shifts in the market, right, for 6 months? Does this motivation not matter anymore? And maybe the answer is yes. But then right? You don't have to be attached to what their answer is to that. Maybe it's like, no, I'm not going to move if the market doesn't change. Okay, well, their motivation isn't high enough then. Now you keep touching base with them, right? And then you keep telling them where the market's shifting. You're not going to talk them into, I hope you don't talk them into moving.
If
that's
move,
not,
they're gonna just pull it off the market when it gets
that's
hard.
what I'm saying. So really it's about understanding their needs when the objection comes up and which one is higher, the objection or the actual motivation, buyer or seller, right? And if you are not in full understanding on the why, it is going to be a battle the entire relationship. All the way till close. And probably after close. because they may or may not be happy. What are your thoughts on that? Okay, can I have an honest show of hands now on who really feels they're equipped with the right questions for their appointments? Okay, if you did not raise your hand, I highly suggest writing at least 10 questions down a day. Anyone that I coach, I tell this to, right? I still do it. I'll write questions down and then I'm like, oh, okay, and I write them all down first. Sometimes I write the first question and then I change a word on the second question. Where I'm like, oh, that might not get an answer. That doesn't end up in, you know, a dead end, right? And then what's the question after that? What's the question after that? And you keep practicing that until all of a sudden you start feeling yourself realize like, oh man, I can have a conversation and go 4 questions deep on that one topic. Because if you're only going 1 to 2 questions, I guarantee that might not even be the real answer. If anyone's ever coached with me, they know that. I don't let it just go at 2 questions, usually like 3, maybe 4, and maybe you don't even notice it, right? But then all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe that isn't as important. It's the same thing with buyers and sellers. All right, any other challenges that you guys are facing right now? Rates, election, time on market, anything else?
Season. What? Season.
The season, like seasonality? Okay, who else is feeling that? What do you mean by that?
People don't know if they should list now or wait until spring.
Okay.
I have 2 clients that they're paying off their student loans before they feel comfortable with taking out a home loan.
Okay, so that's super specific.
Yeah.
Let's talk about seasonality.
Well, I hear this a lot, that we, you know, wait till spring, and I mean, I'm looking to get other perspectives on this too, but every time I hear that, I do talk to the clients about what happens in the spring. You know, once you get to spring, there's so.
Time out. When is spring?
After the Super Bowl.
Okay, is spring actually January 1st? Or do we do, like, is that spring?
It's like February 4th.
Is that spring? Because I am still wearing a parka and I got gloves on and I got a scarf. So number one, what does that actually mean? Because we keep saying spring and people are putting their house on the market as soon as the Super Bowl is over. That's not spring. So what are we talking about? We are also conditioning these clients that spring is February. It is not February. I wish it was February. That's not true, right?
Now, to continue on along those lines, so spring, they're most likely thinking, and you can ask them April, May, right? Or March, April, May. And what happens then is so many homes hit the market that we have a lot of competition. The other thing that happens is in January, there's almost no homes on the market. Because first of all, who wants to list a house in the middle of the winter? And there's a lot of people that job transfer who start looking in January. Tons of buyers come into the market at the beginning of January. And so I always encourage the client to take into consideration getting their house in the market sooner. And it's usually like the first week of February. So we list a ton of stuff the second week of January and the first week of February that people are considering waiting until, you know, March, April, May, or late enough so that when they sell the house, you know, the kids are out of school, that whole entire spring push. And if it's going to be January or February, then they need to be getting their house ready now. And that's an advantage because that's 2 months from now. You know, we've got November and December and all of a sudden it's January. And if we're going to go on January 10th as a consideration, rather than waiting to be on the market with all the other homes and all the other competition, then, you know, we've got to get your house ready now. We also need to take some photos because it could be, could be a whole bunch of snow that, even though we don't have any leaves on the trees, still really got good time to take photos.
Quick question.
No ice.
Why do people not want to sell their home in the middle of the winter?
Put in the snow.
Cool. Like,
People have kids in school and sports, I mean, they do not want to do that in the middle of the year. They want to wait until spring. when
So
spring-
there's an answer to that, always, and it's really easy. So if you list a house in February and it closes at the end of February and somebody says, oh, I want to close in March or April, because there's no other houses on the market, and this happens every single February, then we do rent back agreements. You know, we let people stay until the school. But people get in, they get the good interest rates at the beginning of the year, they get a house purchased, you get your house sold, and then we do rent back agreements for 2 months or 3 months. Get the house on the market.
Are these real objections? These real objections. Seasonality, right? Spring market. So the kids are not in school. Oh, but I'm busy in the summer because we got baseball. Oh, I'm this.
People
If you
never give you the
truly
real reason.
Believe that these are real objections, they are not. You've not really gotten to the deep root of why these people are moving. If you have kids and you're waiting for school, you're just as busy in the summer and then you're on vacation. Because then we say, oh, well, in July, they're all at their cabin. We are making these all real objections. And you're allowing it to run your business. And then you're allowing them to believe that those are real objections. They might be, that might be a fear, right? That might truly be like, oh, this seems like a lot. But again, it's because we're not asking the right questions and the real reason why they want to move and what the end goal actually is. Nobody ever really wants to move. It can be 80 degrees out in the summer and I don't want to move, it's too hot. It's freezing, I don't want to move because there's snow.
I had a great mover for you.
Great thing is there's actually moving companies. The point of this, right, is there will always be objections, always, real or not. But if we don't, as a professional, help get them to the point of understanding why they believe that's an objection, or what the real goal was, why they hired you, shame on us. And I think a lot of us are really afraid to get to that point because you feel like you're pushing them when really you are pushing them if you're not asking the question to get them there to make the decision on their own. But we're not doing that, right?
That's not from here.
Yeah.
And where it's like, we're in, ventures.
Yeah. Well, I mean, per our conversation earlier, right, is that people don't want to go outside, I guess, in the winter, but we live in Minnesota. And then buyers come in, things sit for longer, right? And then you get discounted or people just don't write offers. What are other people's take on that? Do you price differently in December than you do in February?
Agents price differently. So are you asking if your client's perception that
They're gonna get more money.
discounted is?
Jesse's coming from Hawaii, so they don't have seasonality.
There's more competition.
Yeah.
Really
Well,
more
that
of a
would drive up
distance.
prices,
Right, well, right, but I mean,
Possibly.
but if they could want somebody else's house versus clients, if your client's the only, there's low inventory right now, which the buyers are still
More
very
than there was.
reserved, not looking.
And keep in mind, if we're listing a house today and it's going on the market in February, then we're telling our clients that this is the price where it is now in today's market. We're gonna have another conversation 2 weeks prior to listing, you know, and we're gonna reassess where we're at. We're gonna look at how many other homes are on the market. We're gonna look at what else is sold in the neighborhood and in comps, and then we're gonna make an adjustment, you know, if necessary. You have to do that. It's 3 to 4 months from now.
Do you remember when winter didn't matter in 2020, in 2021? Do you remember that?
Fun.
What was different though? The rates?
The
Yeah.
reason,
But the motivation, yes.
I truly believe during that time frame we connected with people very differently. Right? People figured out what really meant something to them during that time, and there was a shift. You don't have to agree with that, but there was definitely a shift on time and where it was spent and what was important. And now we've gotten back into this busy blah, 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 not paying attention to things, not actually allotting time. Maybe appropriately. But there was no seasonality then. We still had winter. We still had spring, we still had fall, and we still had summer. And for 2 years, if you go back and look at that, there was not some big ebb and flow change in real estate. So if you believe it's just climate, I'm going to say false. Any objections to that? I'd love to hear them. What other challenges do we have?
I was gonna say back to what Rick was saying with the election with, once, you know, we're all uncertain right now. Once we find out, then everything's just gonna go back to business as usual. The problem is that I think a lot of people don't feel like we're gonna find out. Or we're gonna find out, like, I think there's just path to uncertainty. Yeah.
Okay.
Be there forever.
Like, I don't think there's like,
I would agree. I don't think
it's wrong on that, but that's the sense I'm getting from people.
Keep in mind, it's like anything else. You know, Hawaii, half of Hawaii burnt down. Oh, that's behind us. COVID was here.
Well, not really.
COVID was here. That's behind us. There's been multiple hurricanes. That's behind us. I mean, stuff happens, life happens. We've had elections, in my opinion, some really, really bad results of elections in a lot of different circumstances, and we're still here. So everything will time out. It's just a matter of it being over.
I think partly what you're attempting to say is like, there's always gonna be some obstacle, right, in life. There's always gonna be something. I'm gonna end this meeting actually telling you something that happened to me yesterday. There's always gonna be an obstacle, right? And you have a choice. You always have choices. And it's up to you what you choose, right? You can sit there and you can be like, I don't know what's gonna happen, or you just go do the things, and maybe you'll fail. And maybe it'll be the worst decision of your life, but guess what? It's not most likely gonna kill you. So learn from it and move on and make a different choice, make the same choice. That's again, a choice. Yesterday I was working out, I was driving home. It was still kind of dark, right? Like 7:10 maybe, and I was at a stoplight. This man was crossing the street. Man had a blinking light on his arm, right? And I watched, and he was walking really slow. Well, the man didn't have his sight, right? So he had a cane that he was walking across the street with. It took him the entire time that this light was red to get across the street. I don't know if you've ever closed your eyes and tried to walk. It's pretty difficult, right? So he walked at a diagonal, didn't realize he was walking at a diagonal, hit the curb. Okay, so he was trying to figure it out. People were annoyed, right? They're like, I can't believe it. I'm late to work. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. He calmly gets over the curb, runs into the stoplight, right? Finds his way again with the cane, turns, there's a pole. Do you think that guy just stopped walking to his destination because he no longer could see where he was going? Or do you think he kept trying the whole day? Guys, we think we have it bad, right? We don't. I guarantee you don't. Choice. Go out there, crush it, and help people make the goals that they want to make, right? That's our job. Any questions? All right, wants and needs. What do we got?
I have a buyer need in Edina up to 2.6-ish. 5+ bed, has to be dialed, has to be big. And then I have an off-market in Edina, 2, 5, 6 bed, 5 bath, just about 6,000 square feet. If you have either of those, let me know.
Why isn't fire just buy now?
I can't tell you.
Yeah, I can't tell you.
Can't talk about their wants, needs, and motivations, okay?
Confidentiality. What else? What else we got? All right, send them to Lydia. She'll send out an email. Have them to her by 2 o'clock. Wants, fire needs, new listing. Also, if you have any open house needs, or you have open houses that you have, please feel free to send those out as well, so we can get them to people who want to find some open houses. Have a good day and.
That's price point. Amazing.
And Lydia's the 600 at Kate.
That's what I've been looking for.